The screaming started from the 13th floor, one long, sharp cry that cut through the walls of the old hotel like a knife. Guests ran into the hallway, but the lights above them began to flicker wildly. Then they all saw it. A tall, dark figure standing at the end of the corridor, its shape twisted, its eyes glowing like burning coals. The air turned ice cold. Doors slammed shut by themselves. Someone shouted, "Don't look at it," but it was too late. The figure lifted its hand, pointing slowly at one terrified woman, and the moment it did, every window on the floor shattered at once. Before anyone could move, the hallway lights went out completely, and then something began walking toward them. No one knew that this nightmare began long before any guest ever checked in. The story truly started years earlier, when James Turner arrived in Las Vegas for the first time. James was 25, an upbeat history student who loved exploring old buildings. He had planned a weekend trip with his friend Michael, hoping to collect pictures of vintage architecture for a small documentary project. When they were picking a place to stay, they chose the Silver Shade Hotel, one of the oldest hotels still standing near the edge of the Strip. Most people ignored it because newer hotels looked brighter and safer, but James liked its classic style and old Hollywood charm. When they walked into the lobby, it felt different from other hotels. It wasn't the decorations or the dim lights. It was the air, thick, heavy, and strangely cold, even though the outside heat was almost unbearable. James noticed an older woman behind the front desk, who seemed nervous every time she looked toward the elevators. "Checking in?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Yes, ma'am," James said. "2 nights." She paused before handing them their keys, as if she wanted to warn them about something, but wasn't sure if she should. "Your room is on the 9th floor. Stay on your floor at night. And don't use the mirror by the elevator. It hasn't worked right in years." James and Michael exchanged looks. It was such a strange thing to say. When they rode the elevator up, they saw exactly what she meant. The mirror inside the elevator was cracked, not in straight lines, but in strange curved shapes that looked almost like claw marks. And when James stood in front of it, his reflection lagged a second behind him, as if the mirror needed time to catch up. He stepped back quickly, his skin prickling. Once they reached their room, things seemed normal enough. The lights worked. The air conditioner rattled, but it cooled the room. They set their bags down and laughed off the creepy feeling. That first night, around 11 p.m., the hallway outside their room began to creak. Soft footsteps moved back and forth. James peeked through the peephole, expecting to see another guest, but the hall was empty. Still, the footsteps continued, slow, dragging steady. When he backed away, the footsteps stopped too, as if whoever, or whatever, was out there knew he was listening. The next morning, they went down for breakfast. The front desk woman looked tired, like she hadn't slept at all. "How was your night?" she asked. "Fine," James replied, though he didn't feel fine. "Who was walking in the hallway?" She shook her head. "No one stays on your floor this week except you." That answer was worse than hearing the hall had been full. As the day went on, they explored Las Vegas, took pictures, and tried to forget the strange feeling of the hotel. But every time James glanced back at the old building, it seemed to be watching him too. That night, everything got worse. James woke up to the sound of someone whispering his name. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting to see Michael playing a prank, but Michael was asleep. The whispering grew louder. James sat up and realized the voice was coming from inside the closet. When he reached for the door, the whispering stopped. The silence was even more frightening. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. The air turned freezing. James tried to shake Michael awake, but Michael wouldn't move at first, like something was holding him down. When he finally opened his eyes, he gasped for air. "Did you feel that?" he asked. James nodded, too shaken to speak. They grabbed their phones and ran out of the room, heading for the elevator. But as soon as the doors opened, they froze. The cracked mirror inside the elevator was glowing faintly, like something behind the glass was pushing to get out. Then, in the mirror, they saw a shadow walking toward them from the hallway behind. But when they turned around, nothing was there. The mirror's shadow kept getting closer, closer. And then the elevator doors slammed shut by themselves. The elevator began to shake. jerking up and down like something outside was pulling the cables. James and Michael slammed their hands against the open button, but nothing worked. The glowing cracks in the mirror stretched wider, like they were splitting open. The shadow figure inside the reflection was now so close that its face was only inches away from the glass, dark, empty, and shaped like a hollow mask. "Don't look at it," Michael shouted, covering his eyes. But James couldn't move. The shadow lifted its hand and pressed it against the inside of the mirror, and the glass began to bend outward, as if it were soft like rubber. A long crack finally snapped across the entire mirror. Then suddenly, the elevator stopped shaking. The lights steadied. The mirror went dark again. The door slid open slowly, with a soft bell sound. They were no longer on the 9th floor. The sign above them showed 13, a floor the hotel never advertised, a floor they didn't even know existed. James stepped out first, trembling. The hallway looked abandoned. The wallpaper peeled off in long strips. Some of the lights above were broken. The air felt dusty and old, like no one had walked here for years. But the worst part was the silence. It was so quiet that even their breathing sounded too loud. "James," Michael whispered, "we need to get back downstairs." They turned around to go back into the elevator, but the doors shut before they could reach them. The button didn't work, no matter how hard they pushed it. Something didn't want them leaving. "Come on," James said, trying to be brave. "There has to be a stairway." They walked carefully down the hall. Every step made the floorboards creak. James kept feeling like someone was walking close behind him, but every time he looked back, nothing was there. Halfway down the hall, they saw an open door. Room 1306. A soft light glowed inside, flickering like a candle. They should have kept moving. They should have run. But James felt pulled toward the room, like something inside was calling him. When they stepped inside, the room looked like it had been frozen in time. Dust covered everything. The bed was still made. A suitcase sat open in the corner, untouched, as if its owner had left in a hurry. On the small table next to the bed, they found an old newspaper clipping under a cracked glass. "Guest found dead in hotel mirror mystery. Body discovered on 13th floor." The article talked about a man who vanished inside the Silver Shade Hotel decades ago. When workers finally found him, he was lying in front of the elevator mirror, as if something had drained the life out of him. The strange part was that the 13th floor was supposed to be sealed shut for renovations. James shivered. The photograph in the article showed a blurry reflection behind the man, something dark and human-shaped. "That's the thing we saw," James whispered. Michael swallowed hard. "We need to leave. Now." But the light in the room flickered. Footsteps echoed in the hallway behind them, slow, dragging footsteps, exactly like the ones from the night before. James grabbed Michael's arm, and they ran out of the room. The hallway lights buzzed, then burst one by one behind them, as if something was chasing them, smashing every bulb along the way. The shadows along the walls stretched and twisted. They finally reached the emergency stairwell door and pushed it open. The stairwell was pitch black. They heard breathing coming from the darkness below. Deep, slow breaths. "Nope," Michael said. "Nope, nope, nope." But the hallway behind them was now filled with a cold wind, and the sound of someone walking closer, closer, closer. James took a deep breath and stepped into the stairwell. They felt along the wall for the railing. Each step down creaked under their feet. The breathing below moved with them, staying at the same distance, like it was following but not rushing. As they reached the next landing, a faint red exit sign glowed. They hurried toward it. Suddenly, someone whispered right next to James's ear, "You shouldn't have come here." James spun around. No one was there. They pushed through the door under the exit sign, only to find themselves back on the 9th floor, as if the building had folded itself in a circle. Their room door stood only a few feet away, but it was open. A soft whispering drifted out, their own names being spoken over and over. James froze. "Michael, we didn't leave the door open." Before Michael could answer, the floor lights began turning off one by one, moving toward them from the far end of the hallway. Click, 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 plunging everything into darkness as something rushed toward them at full speed. The Yendi.